Good afternoon in New York and Eastern North America. Good morning, Los Angeles, Middle and Western parts. Good evening in the Democratic Republic of Congo, or DRC, and the rest of Africa, and the United Kingdom, Europe, and welcome whatever time of day or night for all who are joining us today from all corners of the world. I'm Yael Danieli, founder and executive director of the International Center for Multi-Generational Legacies of Trauma, ICMGLT for short. Thank you for joining our webinar on Radioactive Access, a woman's journey into the uranium trade. Today's International Center for Multi-Generational Legacies of Trauma webinar takes place during the Third Preparatory Committee for the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, 11th Review Conference that takes place from 28 April to 9 May at UN headquarters in New York. This virtual side event presents a documentary by filmmaker Shani Haziza that explores the shocking ease with which a woman can purchase uranium in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The film brings critical attention to issues of nuclear security, gendered and intergenerational vulnerabilities, and the global implications of unchecked trafficking in radioactive material. Following the showing of the documentary Uranium to Die For, international interdisciplinary expert panelists will reflect on its revelations and their implication for the NPT. Please keep in mind one quote today: nuclear weapons are not an inevitable force of nature. They were built by human hands, and they can be dismantled by human hands. Your moderator, I am a clinical psychologist, traumatologist, victimologist, and psychohistorian. Having developed the first program to help Nazi Holocaust survivors and their children in the 1970s, I have devoted much of my career to studying, treating, writing about, and preventing lifelong and multi-generational impacts of massive trauma worldwide, to ensuring victims' rights, the rights of future generations, and to reparative justice. The nuclear version of the Danieli Inventory for Multi-Generational Legacies of Trauma exists in most of the relevant languages and is currently utilized to assess the intergenerational impacts of nuclear bombing and of nuclear radiation and fallout. Today's first speaker is our filmmaker, Shany Haziza, an award-winning investigative journalist and documentary filmmaker. Her first film, Uranium to Die For, revealed a global network of uranium smuggling from Africa and was screened internationally, and we are honored today seeing it as well. She recently created The Atom and I, a groundbreaking series on Israel's nuclear history and policy. Shani received the 2023 Sokolov Award for Journalism for her professionalism and achievement. Our second speaker is Professor Serge Tashibangu, a senior official in the Democratic Republic of Congo, served as special envoy and high representative of the president. He played a central role in regional peace processes and led research on illegal mining, mineral smuggling, and financial flows linked to conflict and terrorism. He promotes DRC-USA-Israel cooperation across sectors such as security, trade, energy, and infrastructure. He holds advanced degrees from Wits University, the University of Bern, and NDU in the United States. Third is Ori Rabinovich. Dr. Rabinovich is Chevening Scholar, holds the 2024-2025 Associate Professor post at Stanford. Senior lecturer at the International Relations Department of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Israel. Her research interests include nuclear proliferation, intelligence studies, and Israeli-American relations. She earned her PhD in the War Studies Department of King's College London and both her masters in Security Studies and LLB in Law at Tel Aviv University, which, by the way, is my alma mater too. Last but not least is Dr. Daniel Salisbury, a visiting research fellow at the Center for Science and Security Studies within the Department of War Studies. Dr. Salisbury is also an associate fellow at the Royal United Service Institute. He previously held positions at CSSS and Henry L. Stimson Center, Harvard Kennedy School's Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs, the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies, and the International Institute for Strategic Studies. We have 2 hours for the webinar, though we have been known for a most engaged audience who keeps us longer. Following taking a deep breath after watching Uranium to Die For, each of our presenters will speak for about 7 minutes. After an interchange among us, I will open the floor to questions and brief comments from the virtual audience, which also has a few surprises today. We will then conclude with Quote's last words. Please use the Q&A or chat function, and we will do our best to respond to as many questions and brief comments as we can. Feel free to direct your question to a particular panelist or to the panel, to the full panel. I now have the great honor to welcome the film Uranium to Die For.
קונגו. לפני 5 שנים הגעתי לכאן בפעם הראשונה לרפובליקה הדמוקרטית, במסגרת סיקור של המצב ההומניטרי. דמות מפתח במשלחת האו"ם לאזור סיפרה לי על עניין שאמור להטריד את העולם כולו. האיש סיפר על אורניום שמגיע בדרך לא דרך מהמכרות בקונגו לאיראן. קריאה וסחר של אורניום בקונגו אינם חוקיים זה שנים. בעבר, כשעוד הייתה קונגו קולוניה בלגית, התרכזה קריאת האורניום במכרה ששמו שינקלומבה, במחוז קטנגה, המחוז העשיר במדינה.
Rabbi, may I stop you for a minute? Would you enlarge, would you put the film on full screen because people find it difficult to read the subtitles? Is there a way to make it full screen?
Sorry, there's not a way to make it full screen on this format.
I'm very sorry. We'll do our best, please.
היה גם המכרה ששימש את האמריקנים בהכנת הפצצה שהופלה על הירושימה ב-1945, ואשר גבתה את חייהם של כ-140,000 בני אדם. הקלות היחסית שבה היה אפשר להגיע לאורניום ואיכותו הגבוהה, הפכו את המכרה למקום שגם המעצמות הגרעיניות חיפשו בו דריסת רגל. כבר 50 שנה שהמכרה סגור רשמית והקריאה בו אסורה על פי חוק. למרות זאת, יש שמועות וחשדות שהפעילות במכרה נמשכת וכי סביבו פורח שוק שחור צהוב של אורניום. How can I get to the market and buy myself uranium sticks?
Of what?
Of what?
Of uranium.
Uranium? That you can buy it in Lumbashi.
You get in Lumbashi only casting.
לפני שחזרתי לקונגו, פגשתי את גולדן מסביקו ואת סרט שיבנגו. שני גולים קונגולזים שנאלצו לברוח ממולדתם לאחר שנכלאו ועונו, בעקבות דוח שפרסם גולדן על הברחות אורניום מהמדינה. I'm serious. Is it possible for me to go to the market and see?
Of course. Yes. What do you think?
Not going to be weird that the woman's coming to buy?
No.
No?
They don't have problem with that. As long as you don't tell them that you come from Israel. So you come from South Africa. Yes, I'm from Middle East countries. Besides Israel, of course. But yes.
But you need to protect you. Do you have anything? Do you have any watch that is protecting you against radioactivity?
Important for me that you give me some tips about what should I be careful of.
No. First of all, never tell them when you decide to leave Lubumbashi. Never tell them. They will not hesitate once if they need to finish you. They understand that you expose them. You are trying to expose them.
ברנרד הוא חבר ותיק. בתחילה חששתי לגלות לו מה מטרת הביקור האמיתית. סיפרתי לו שאני עושה סרט על המצב בארץ המחצבים במלאת 50 שנה לעצמאות קונגו ולסיום הקולוניאליזם.
When we got independence, Belgians who were colonialists here were forced to go, but to go without anything. So all the golds they have, all the minerals they have, they dig, they put in, they put and hide it in beton. How we could say, like stones, they built like stones and put it and hide it. So people started to go in and dig themselves, find something, and they found the materials unbelievable. So and no one is controlling it.
ברנרד הציע לי לנסוע לבקר במכרה זהב סמוך. אורניום אפשר למצוא גם בזהב ובמחצבים אחרים. העניין הוא שלרוב הוא מופיע בריכוזים נמוכים מאוד. שמחתי בכל זאת על ההזדמנות לראות מקרוב איך נראה מכרה ואיך מתנהלת עבודת הקריאה. בסופו של דבר, קריאה של יהלומים, זהב או אורניום מתבצעת באותה שיטה.
I know rivers that are full of gold and you don't have to ask for permission. This is the way it is in the bushes. No one is there.
Andukashi tunatumika saa vile kaa tuko 10 na njogisi tunatumika yetu shimo tu. Njogisi tunatumika kaa tunatumika vile tunapata mchango yetu yapata hivi tunabeba kuma tunaenda sukuli ndio kupata oro sasa. Ngisi mtu anapata hivi.
אני מגיעה לכינוס קוראים במזרח קונגו, בתקווה שאמצא שם מישהו שיוכל לשפוך קצת אור על שוק האורניום ואולי גם על המכרה הסגור בשינקלומבה.
Buco Fer, Buco Grenat Rouge, Améthyste, Shani Charbon, Tourmaline,
Uranium. But is the country supposed to have lots of money?
Aseme mbone kwenye nasikia napata razimu. Aseme mbone nchi yenu ni skandali iko nani sana.
Ndio tunafia ile.
Sibasaidia siku
mali iko mingi jala sasa.
Je vais vous expliquer. Des entreprises minières qui viennent exploiter le cuivre, le cobalt, etc. Hein? Et à côté d'eux, il y a des gens d'ici, des jeunes gens d'ici qui sont au chômage et qui se livrent à l'exploitation artisanale des minéraux. Mais eux, ils n'ont pas le moyen de pouvoir traiter ces minéraux. Donc, ils exploitent les sols bruts qu'ils vont vendre auprès d'autres acheteurs, des entreprises qui vont transformer à l'état de cuivre brut pour exporter maintenant à l'étranger.
אני מתקשה לדבר עם אנשים על אורניום. לא מצליחה לנתב את השיחה לכיוון הנכון, בלי לחשוש שאחשוף את הסיבה האמיתית לביקור שלי כאן. בכל פעם שאני מנסה להעלות את הנושא, מסתררת שתיקה. כשסיפרתי לבסוף לברנרד את האמת, כשאני בדרך לשינקלומבה, למכרה הסגור, הוא מיד הזהיר אותי שמדובר בעולם אפל ומסוכן. סחר באורניום בקונגו אינו חוקי, הוא אומר, וכל הנושא הוא בבחינת טאבו.
אוקיי.
ברנרד מסביר שאני לא צריכה לטוס את קטנגה. סוחרי אורניום יש גם פה. ובתוך כמה ימים הוא מצליח לקבוע לי פגישה עם סוחר מקומי.
He's coming in 10 minutes. He'll be here. Yeah.
You'll sit here next to him, or shall I sit here and... Do you remember that Anna? And I'm from Bulgaria.
Yeah.
מגיעים שני גברים. האחד מהם נועל, מביא שקית פלסטיק שחורה, ומניח אותה מתחת לשולחן. אנה.
אנה?
נועל? מה שואלים סוחר אורניום? מה אם הוא יבין שלא באמת באתי לעשות עסקים?
Quizás no puñe bien con yo, ni comandé a comer la ella que viene con él no va a comer. Hoje dio na.
בפעם הראשונה אני מתחילה לפחד.
Benye vitu iko vingine kama hii inapitisha tu sana la majorité des cycles mine za générations de voyager par mais kuko 400 kilo yenyewe kwanza chini.
You don't talk about the price. We'll see after we'll check, but just to get
An idea.
Yeah.
Si tunaweza penda tutumike naye na situkosee na situmkosee ndio tutumike.
Sasa tabatiwe.
Ukifungula manakiri pale kwenye vitu unaotaka hakuna mayani, hakuna nini. Mimi niliachaka deja benye walichimbaka walikufa.
Did he open it himself?
He opened it.
And you wasn't afraid?
No, naambia kama nilikuwa na problem moja. Sasa nilifungulaga wakati moja. Kwanza ile kukoona, kufanya chache.
So, and just to open for taking a picture, it also might be dangerous?
Sasa mimi mfungule ile na gari akiteste aidha yeye tupate rari tutaili shugaba hata wazungu wale wakifanya
אני נוסעת לביתו של נואל כדי לקחת דוגמה מהחומר לבדיקת מעבדה.
Andre, haukujungulia sana. Kwa karibu basi nikamatie hivi. Bonjour, je m'appelle Bernard Kaloumé.
Merci beaucoup.
Je suis officier de l'information publique de la MONUC.
Ok.
במסגרת תפקידו באום, משמש ברנרד איש הקשר עם אנשי המיליציות במזרח קונגו. כדי להבין את הסיפור הוא מסביר, צריך להכיר את הקורבנות שלו. האנשים גורשו מבתיהם על ידי בעלי אמצעים וקבוצות חמושות, שידעו שבאדמות שלהם יש מחצבים יקרים.
Sasa tulikimbiaga masasi, alikuwa na masasi anarukia mu mlango. Tukaona sasa tutakufia pale, tukakimbia sasa.
Who are these people who usually do that? And what are they looking in those lands?
Uranium. And one of my friends was killed because of this story.
Kupa penye bariko banajipitika mu mapori vamoa viko banarudia kule kufika kule wanawanyanya wanalala viko wanawanyanyasa kwenye wanalala
Ndio
sasa bakina sisi hatuna nguvu kusikia bile wakati vinandofika bile vinaacha tunaogopa.
קשה לתפוס את גודל האסון של קונגו. יותר מ5 מיליון בני אדם נהרגו ונרצחו פה בשנים האחרונות. מיליציות אלימות שטופחות זו בזו, ובתושביה האומללים של קונגו, עדיין שולטות באזורים רבים. מי שמנסים לעשות קצת סדר בקאוס הם חיילי משלחת האום לאזור. בקונגו מוצבת משלחת האום הגדולה בעולם, ובה כ-22,000 חיילים. כבר שנים מתריעים באום כי במכרות האורניום שלטות מיליציות, ויש סכנה אמיתית שאורניום עלול להגיע לידיים הלא נכונות.
This, until very recently, was a peacekeeping force. We are now a stabilization mission. The problem has been the state is not controlling these resources, and so they fell into the hands of armed groups, bandits, and which has been one of the reasons that this conflict has been sustained.
There are a lot of minefields in these areas, so the power struggle is always on.
Do you get involved in what's going on
No, ma'am. If you appreciate the distance is, 70 to 80 kilometers away into the bushes. As soon as we understand or we come to know about any major incident, we do send our patrols.
arakini hiki kilimo barikura bari nini bari kamura.
He's saying that they have been suffering very much because whenever they meet local population cultivating, they've been asking them to harvest for them. They take all their crops with them, they go with it. Sometimes they could beat them, sometimes they could kidnap some of them, they go with them just to the bush.
הקצינים שפגשתי אמרו לי שלא למצלמה, שבאזור מסתובבת חוליה של אל-קאידה. זו החוליה האחראית לפיצוץ שהיה שבועיים קודם לכן באוגנדה, ובו נהרגו יותר מ-60 בני אדם. אני מתבקשת לשמור על פרופיל נמוך ולא לומר לאף אחד שאני מישראל.
The FRDC officer is just trying to show how they used to cross this river. According to the instruction which they have got from the government, whenever they see them, immediately they start firing on them.
There is corruption everywhere, as you know, in this country. For example, I can go and arrange with a colonel. I give him $20,000. He will give me 5 soldiers who will go with me into the mines. There are mines that have never been exploited, so they know what they are doing.
We are, of course, a peacekeeping mission. The whole mining industry, that's an issue for the World Bank to deal with if it's about governance or corruption or that sort of issues. That's beyond the scope of a peacekeeping mission.
אני חוזרת לבוקבו וקובעת עם נואל, הסוחר שהציע לי לקנות אורניום, להיפגש במעבדה בעיר. עובד של אחת המעבדות מוכן תמורת שוחד, לבצע עבורנו בדיקה של אחוז האורניום בחומר. תוצאות המעבדה מגיעות, אבל הן מאכזבות. כמות האורניום זניחה, פחות מ1% מהחומר. כדי להפיק כמות משמעותית של אורניום, יש צורך במאות טונות מהחומר הזה. אני מחליטה לחזור לתוכנית המקורית ולהמשיך למחוז קטנגה, כדי להבין מה קורה במכרה הסגור בשינקלומבה, ואולי אפילו להשיג שם חומר טוב יותר.
to go with you in Lubumbashi, maybe they can arrest you.
בזמן שאנחנו מתארגנים לנסיעה, ברנרד מספר לי שחייו בסכנה. זה כמה שבועות אנשי מיליציה מאיימים לפגוע בו ובמשפחתו משום שהוא בקשר עם עיתונאים. הוא מציע שאחיו ריימון יצטרף אליי במקומו.
He knows, and he will die for Israel too.
No, we don't. First, I'll cut you.
Sorry, this is, I don't know, I know Israel, I know.
I don't want to put not you and not Raymond in danger. Nothing worth none of us life. התגובה של ברנרד קצת הלחיצה אותי. המסע הזה כבר לא דומה לשום משימה עיתונאית שביצעתי בשנים האחרונות. מושל קטנגה מויס קטומבה הוא בעצם משה סוריאנו, בנו של ניצול שואה ישראלי לשעבר מנתניה. בשנות ה-50 אביו הגיע לאפריקה לעשות עסקים והחליט להישאר.
The size of Katanga is almost the size of France, and in Katanga you are 10 million people now. I think God put everything in our provinces for ourselves to call good investors, which even are in Israel, in different countries, to come and invest here. The last 3 years I've been governor. I think there have been investments of over $12 billion in my province in the mining sector and in different areas.
Are there any Israeli businessmen who's investing here?
There is plenty Israeli businessmen investing here. There is Mr. Benny. There is Benny Shtamin. There is Mr. Dan Gettler.
כולם כאן מכירים את גרטלר. יהלומן ישראלי שבעבר ניהל עסקים גם בסיירה לאון ובאנגולה. הוא מוכר בקונגו כחברו הטוב של הנשיא קבילה. איש סודו הוא מי שמצטרף אליו אפילו לנסיעות רשמיות ברחבי העולם.
I don't want to have the problem. I don't want to give the impression that I'm attacking Dan.
גרטלר הוא דמות מעוררת מחלוקת בקונגו, ולא אחת מוצג בתקשורת המקומית כאחד מנציגי הקולוניאליזם המשחית והדורסני. וכמי שקנה את קרבתו לנשיא בהרבה מאוד דולרים. לא מכבר אף רכש גרטלר אחוזים בחברת הקריאה הממשלתית של קונגו.
There were Chinese who made him be interested in Shinkolobwe.
לפני שנתיים הוציאה ממשלת קונגו מכרז לכריית אורניום באזור המכרה הסגור. זה קרה אחרי שנים של איסור על סחר במינרל הרדיואקטיבי.
For some reason, the French overtook.
מי שלבסוף זכתה היא חברת ערבה. ערבה נמצאת בבעלות ממשלת צרפת ונחשבת למובילה בעולם בהקמתן של תחנות כוח גרעיניות. החוזה טרם נחתם, המכרה, רשמית לפחות, עדיין סגור. ככל שהעמקתי בתחקיר, הופתעתי לגלות שמות כמו עלי ומומו, משפחת הג'ידין הלבנונית שנחשבת מקורבת לחיזבאללה, קים הצפון קוריאני שרכש טונות של אורניום, וביום בהיר אחד נעלם, בפורסט, יהודי בלגי עשיר, גם שמו נקשר לסחר במינרל ההוא. כולם בוחשים בקלחת.
Je te dis qu'il y a ici, il y a plein. Et moi, je sais que beaucoup de gens qui sont là, qu'on appelle qui sont venus travailler. Moi, je vois que l'intérêt, beaucoup d'intérêt, c'est dans l'uranium. C'est dans l'uranium. Il y a les Chinois, il y a les Indiens, il y a des Libanais. Allez-y à Kasumbalesa, même du côté de la Zambie, tu verras, il n'y a pas moins de 100 tracts qui sortent, maman. Vous pouvez vérifier, pas moins de 100 tracts qui sortent. Et dans toutes ces matières qui sortent là, il y a plein d'uranium.
One thing I know is that the uranium that is being taken from Congo is going somewhere. It's not going to Israel. It's not going to America. The only market they have is the nuclear project in Iran, or in North Korea, or in China.
So when you have like Sifa mining, actually Sifa is the name of the mother of Kabila. Yeah. You ask who built that using, they will tell you that North Koreans came there and engineers actually built that using.
We have spent the last 15 years being attacked by states, by companies, foreign companies who are looting our wealth, by private groups that were enjoying the weakness of the state apparatus. We are victims of our wealth. We are victims of our mineral resources. That's all. Economic war.
ב-2008 חתמה ממשלת סין על חוזה ענקי עם ממשלת קונגו. סין התחייבה להשקיע $8 מיליארד בתשתיות, ובתמורה קיבלה זיכיונות לכרייה במכרות.
Haina shida kufanya meeting, tunasikilizana. Tulisema tutengeneze mbele barabara Kakonto, shimona wanatengeneza. Alors tutatengeneza hii barabara itaenda kutoka paka Kasongo Michel. Kwa msama miotoke itaanza kufanya nini? Kujunguluka. Kuna bakia problemu ya courant. Tunasikilizana.
We are not blind. We know who is really helping us and who is trying just to do like when he needs another goal. But what do? We are in need to maintain this country alive. So this is not our problem.
כשביקשתי לצלם מפעל של חברה סינית, הצמיד אליי המושל את הדובר שלו קשינדה.
Ah bah vous filmez, oui. Demandez-moi. Non, je suis journaliste. Moshe, où est le Congolais? Nico conseiller ou gouverneur. Bien. Tout le soldat Congo. Faut vous respecter droit yen. Papa, si vous êtes là, il faut respecter. À pas na ville. Mina consommer la mungu. Kama mina sema passeport yabo haitatoka. Visa haitatoka. Non, filmer Bruce tu na tembe. Hata filmer magazine. Okay. Papa. Kota na carte toto kimbembe. Kota to kile kimbembe. Eta major. Nipatie kota kile.
לא הבנתי למה היועץ המושל הכל כך אהוב של קטנגה נבהל מכמה חיילים. אולי מפני שבחוזה עם הסינים מעורבים מיליארדי דולרים והרבה אינטרסים? ומי שאומר את המילה האחרונה עם כל הכבוד למושל הוא השלטון המושחת בקינשאסה?
Mais j'ai laissé ce business à cause de mon pays. Le peuple congolais, vraiment, ça me fait mal au cœur. Je préférais même mourir comme les autres sont en train de mourir à cause de ce qui se passe dans mon pays.
פאפה סולומון מארגן לנו פגישה בבית קפה בליקסי. פגישה עם שוטר שמוכן למכור לנו חומר באיכות גבוהה. לבית הקפה מגיע השליח של השוטר. כעבור שעה מגיע השוטר. Did the guy ask you what do you need this material for? Who are the buyer? Where are they coming from?
Epana bangweza mbongo. Akomona ke oyo paske oyo aza musulman, oyo aza boyete. mbongo ikatirika.
בדיקת מעבדה מאשרת שמדובר ביאלו קייק. אורניום מעובד שאותו מכניסים לצנטריפוגות המפורסמות. היאלו קייק, העוגה הצהובה, נמצאת בשימוש בייצור דלק ומוטות של כורים גרעיניים, אך היא גם יכולה לעבור תהליך העשרה שיתאים אותה לייצור נשק גרעיני. המחיר, $200,000 לטונה אחת. האספקה אם נרצה, מיידית. המקור, מכרה האורניום הסגור בשינקלומבה.
If there is a bomb which is going to be made, it's not uranium from Congo. Zambia is opening an uranium mine. Namibia, they are doing already. In Niger, the French company are there. In South Africa.
האורניום בקונגו נחשב לאורניום משובח ביותר. כבר בשנות ה-30, במכתב ששלח אז אלברט איינשטיין לנשיא ארצות הברית רוזוולט, הוא הסב את תשומת ליבו לעובדה שבקונגו יש את האורניום הטוב בעולם. אלה היו הימים שבהם החל פרויקט הגרעין האמריקני, תוכנית מנהטן, לקרום עור וגידים.
You've got a bad spot because of this bomb which the uranium came from Shinkolobwe. Everyone is saying, oh, they used that one. Why next time the country is not really from Congo? My president can't allow it. Myself, I can't allow it. You can go on the road if you want with my journalists. You can visit the place because you are not hiding anything.
גם ישראל, שבעבר ימנה חיילים קונגולזים, רכשה כאן, על פי מקורות זרים, 200 טונות של אורניום בפעולה חשאית בסוף שנות ה-60, במבצע סודי שכלל חברת קש ואונייה איטלקית. You said that there's a high radiation here, in this area?
Oui, dans les lointains là. Dans les anciennes carrières.
Can we go out?
Bon, on ne visite pas. Parce que si vous allez, vous voyez qu'il n'y a que la brousse là. Il n'y a que la brousse. Il y a beaucoup de risques d'être irradié en allant plus loin là.
קשינדה והנהג מדברים ביניהם בסווהילית כדי שלא אבין.
אתה רוצה שבנטו, בנשבתו שמנגו, בגוננני, בגונצ'ימבולה. Tous ces bâtiments existaient, c'était des bâtiments administratifs qui ont été bombardés par les Américains, ça va être après la Deuxième Guerre mondiale. Par exemple, quand vous voyez les murs qui protégeaient à l'époque l'uranium, où les concessions où on exploitait l'uranium sont épais, ils sont très épais. l'exploitation était interdite. L'organisation de l'Association de l'énergie atomique avait interdit toute exploitation des minéraux de l'uranium ici. Le gouvernement congolais a respecté la consigne, la décision de cette organisation internationale d'énergie atomique. Mais les carrières sont fermées, sont inaccessibles. C'est la brousse, on ne peut pas y aller. C'est la brousse comme ça.
Can we go without the car and then see?
Without the permission of the quad, it is impossible. If we go by ourselves, we can do so.
So what are we doing now?
On ne voit pas les minéraux. Les minéraux sont enterrés dans le sol.
So why do they need a guide to watch the place?
Mais justement, pour que les gens ne viennent pas d'une manière isolée.
Why there's lots of people who's trying to come here?
Mais les gens ne viennent pas, justement, parce que on ne peut plus exploiter.
לא נותר מקום לספק. על פנינו חולפות משאיות עמוסות פועלים בדרכן למכרה. ובכפר הסמוך יש פעילות ערה. המכרה פתוח.
Là, ici, que je vous dise, il y a des monstres, il y a des monstres, il y a des monstres, il y a des femmes qui mettent au monde des monstres à cause de l'uranium.
Il y a un enfant qui est né avec l'absence de la paroi abdominale et aussi l'ambiguïté sexuelle. Voilà. Et il y a aussi une grande tumeur au niveau du sacrum. Et l'enfant est décédé tout de suite à la naissance. Celui-là, il n'a vécu que quelques minutes après la naissance. Intéressé donc au travail des maris de ces femmes-là, eh bien tous travaillaient sur des sites miniers. Nous nous sommes dit que certainement c'est en rapport avec l'activité minière qu'on a observé l'augmentation de ce type de malformation. Donc ça, l'exploitation sauvage peut exposer à l'irradiation de la population.
ישבתי במלון ולא יכולתי להפסיק לחשוב על הכפר הסמוך למכרה. על האנשים והילדים שבלב הכפר שלהם פועם מכרה אורניום רדיואקטיבי. לא יכולתי לעצור. בטח לא עכשיו. אני חייבת לברר מי הם אותם אנשים שעובדים במכרה ואיך כל זה עובד. אני שולחת למכרה את ריימונד. מצויד במצלמה נסתרת וסיפור כיסוי של איש עסקים שרוצה לקנות אורניום. להפתעתו, מפנים אותו לעובד מושחת של ה-ANR, שירות המודיעין הממשלתי באזור שינקלומבה.
Sasa nalikuwa juu ya kuangalia kitu ninaweza kujitupa ndani kidogo huko. Hizi tunaweza kufanya vipi vya kupata maji kidogo ya kuchuruza. Ma chiffre bon ça dépend de takuwa na masak vide.
Njoo ba preser utabangisha kama nachimbura majiwe ile banileta vile mtasumbura nao. Kama ni wewe unapatia hapa, wewe yako unapatia hapa, uje utende nao kwa maison, ma pourcentage, na pas ma pourcentage. Service. $50. Quand on est passé à $50, la police à peu près $250.
Hakuna saa moja mnapataka quantité ka uranium par exemple. Nayo iko. Makrezeri banaweza kuwa na idea ya tenacité ya pourcentage inaweza ku ya ile uranium. Sasa na watu wanaweza kupima je jour à jour ici réellement
il faut acheter sur le travail pour conserver ma fiche à force.
Ndio sasa naoni sanction za kamata cuivre wanaenda kula bonjo baba na separe.
Hapa hiyo bacha kusepare.
Asante sana. Okay. Tukuendaje basi?
האמת היא שזה כנראה הזמן לצאת מפה. גם ככה התחלתי להרגיש שזה מסוכן מדי. במשך יומיים לא יצאתי מהמלון מחשש שאחד הסוחרים יראה אותי עם צוות צילום. ואז הגיעה בדיקת המעבדה של החומר משינקלומבה. הבדיקה מאשרת שיש בו 86% אורניום. אבל אז הכנופיה של השוטר לוחצת שניפגש שוב. הם רוצים להתקדם. עכשיו אני לא יכולה פתאום להיעלם. אני כבר נמצאת עמוק בתוך הסיפור, ובינתיים מנסה למשוך קצת זמן.
Tell them that I'm not the one who have the money here. When the results are good, and when we have all the papers, and we see that it's a good material, this is the material we are looking for, I need to send the certification to my bosses in Kinshasa. I need to send it to my boss in Kinshasa. He will say that it's okay, and only then I will be able to give them the money and close the deal.
פאפה סולומון יוצא לפגוש עובד של ג'ק המים, חברת הקריאה הממשלתית של קונגו.
Tu vois? Parce que elle aimerait faire des affaires avec nous, en tout cas pour Zangaï. Mais ça, elle aussi, elle ne peut pas présenter le bout de papier à son patron. Patron qui attaque la tête. Est-ce que c'est comme qui te dit à ton camp. Donc, attends, là, les sorties n'ont pas engagé là. On a vu comme qui sortent là, c'est pas engagé. Il a compromis le cible.
Le problème caché du papier de l'OCCI, j'ai parlé avec Fabien, c'est qu'on peut faire partout de lui, il y a toujours lieu de pouvoir faire quelque chose, mais je crois lui-même aussi va vous dire qu'il faut vraiment les garanties. Donc il n'y a pas de problème. Il n'y a pas de problème. Moi je suis chef de service, mais le chef de la route. Il met sa signature, ça part chez le numéro 1.
Le président de l'Iran. C'est venu d'ici.
In July, Golden Misabiko, the Katanga province president of the National Association for the Human Rights, Azadu, was arrested by the National Intelligence Agency, ANR.
כבר שנתיים שגולדן חי בגלות בדרום אפריקה. הדוח שחיבר בעזרת סרצ' חושף שבקונגו מתנהל שוק שחור של אורניום והממשלה עצמה מעורבת בו באמצעות אנשי ה-ANR, השירות החשאי שמפעילה הממשלה מקינשסה בכל רחבי המדינה. אותם אנשי ANR שהציעו לי לקנות אורניום, הם אלה שהגיעו לעצור את גולדן ואת סרג'.
Because of this report, I was persecuted and I was prosecuted. If Madam Hillary Clinton did not pronounce my name, I want Golden Misabiko out, they would just kill me.
I've been arrested on the 10th of May. Okay, I've been kidnapped actually because they came to pick me at my place in Lubumbashi.
סרג' היה האחראי לאיסוף המודיעין ששימש לכתיבת הדוח עד שנעצר.
I started to pull one of my teeth without any anesthesia. If I'm not telling them where's the report. I said I didn't know.
Floribert Chebeya, one of the prominent human rights defenders who was killed in Congo. This is Floribert. And Joseph Kabila killed him.
Why don't you just shoot me? You can just shoot me, you kill me and Tiam. And we end the story. They said they could not give me that gift by killing me. They were happy to see me like that.
It comes from Shikolo, but if you want it out of DRC, like the border, out of DRC, they can do that. Out of Zambia or Zimbabwe or even out of South Africa, they can do that for you.
Okay, tomorrow.
$1 million we are talking about, because this is the process.
Okay, so I'll give you a call tomorrow morning. אני לא באמת צריכה להסתכן בפגישה נוספת. המשימה העיתונאית כבר מזמן הושלמה. המכרה פתוח, יש שוק שחור צהוב פורח של אורניום, אין ספק שבחירי ממשל מעורבים במה שקורה פה, והקולוניאליזם מחדש ישן חי ובועט. ובכל זאת, משהו בהבטחה שמעבדה ממשלתית מוכנה למכור לי אורניום מועשר, את הדבר האמיתי שממנו אפשר להכין פצצת אטום, חומר שלא אמור להימצא כלל בקונגו כי אין פה מתקנים מתאימים, מסקרן אותי. החלטתי להישאר.
C'est à Lubumbashi, à la marché central de M. Kabila. Oui, on joue le contre Mazembe. Le dribble, nous l'on donne à Kassamangoi, et Kabongo qui dribble, et nous donne à Timanga donne à Kazadi, Golo! Produisez!
Karibu motoka hapa na hiyo ingie hapa.
בבוקר, אני שולחת את פאפה סולומון ובחור נוסף לפגוש את השוטר שאמור להביא דוגמה של אורניום מועשר מהמעבדה. לשוטר מצטרפים 3 מעובדי ג'ק המיין. וכדי שהמפגש ייראה חשוד פחות, אחד מהם מגיע עם אשתו.
באמריקה בקו, פול ז'וזף נבבל. njoo pale bana simamia hili mama. Ulioshikia habari kwa bariandama bantu mushingo kombe aila kuzazi litoka Kinshasa. Shindo bakonja kutosha materia mwili mushingo. Ndio na kutulia hiyo. Ile ingari brit. Hii hivi bana promet. Eko travailler déjà. Mukantite iko produit fini bana yua mukantite ile bana weka. Sasa je pombe ile tumikia pako. Il peut y avoir des États-Unis ou bien Belgique. Les deux pays ont habilité à consommer que le produit est cher. Ça va par par exemple 60 tonnes. Le tonne chaque. Au 10. Il est habillé.
השוטר נותן לפאפה סולומון נייר ועליו פרטי המעבדה מאוהיו, ארצות הברית, שממנה לטענתו הגיע החומר.
Mshwe mkono ushika. Hapa hata mtu unapita namna gani? Hakuna hata mtu ataile. Leta huko. Leta yapo kuna problem. Acha msala. Mtoto moja. Sasa unapenda ngapi pesa? Haitatufaa mbaya j'espère. Sasa kosho funga kwa hiyo. Mesure de prudence. Hapa wewe. Unapona? Manjiko hili njoo tuko naye.
Good morning. Is it Omot Laboratory?
No, this is Vega Americas.
Did you change the name? Because I saw on the internet that Omot is also Vega.
Omar Vega was our old name. We changed our name March 1st.
Ah, okay. I'm an Israeli journalist and I'm doing a research about uranium black market.
Just a moment.
John Cronenberg.
Hi, John. I received an information that your company is dealing with illegal material from Congo.
Yeah, all I can do is if you want to send me something, you're more than happy. Okay, thank you.
Hello?
The technology to build a bomb has spread. Terrorists are determined to buy, build, or steal one. One nuclear weapon exploded in one city, be it New York or Moscow, Tokyo or Tel Aviv, Paris or Prague, could kill hundreds of thousands of people. There is no end to what the consequences might be.
They usually prefer cash, but if you can find a way of to justify why you put that money in their account, then they don't have problem with that.
If I continue doing the same thing, I'm likely again to be killed. I'm defending people. I would like to be killed because of that, rather than being killed for not doing anything.
Nous avons presque tous les minéraux que le bon Dieu, mon Dieu nous a donnés. Mais ça ne profite pas au peuple congolais.
It's time some people from outside come and take care of this. If not, the danger will come to your door and it will be too late.
Yael, you're on mute.
I responded again today as I have when I first saw the film. Really hard to take. And of course, we could have at least 5 webinars on it because there's so many dimensions for discussion. But let's, and we just put on the chat as a reminder the bios of our august panelists. So just in case, hello, Serge, it's good to see you. Hi. Both Shani and Serge are real heroes here. Shani, please, the screen is yours too.
Okay, so first, thank you for joining us and thank you for watching the movie. I'll use my 7 minutes to talk about beyond the scene of the work on this documentary. So my first visit to Congo was in 2006, almost 20 years ago. That's why me and Serge look much more younger. Back then, like today, Congo was in a state of war. I was sent with a crew to document the humanitarian crisis. And we filmed 3 short documentaries. The first one was about the systematic rape of women, another one about child soldiers, and the last one was about the long bloody conflict with Rwanda. It was quite a journey, and it felt like only in just 1 week, we managed to witness all the brutality the world has to offer. On the final night before leaving Kinshasa, I had dinner with someone with a UN official, we'll call him, who told me that we know Iran is smuggling uranium for Congo. Not suspect, not believe, we know. But, and this is a big but, we don't have the smoking gun. Maybe that's something that you as a journalist, especially as an Israeli journalist, should look into. When I returned home, I couldn't let go of that conversation, of course. I kept working during the day as a research coordinator. I couldn't really come to my editor and tell him that this is the story I want to work about. It sounds too big, too far away from Israel, like something that I can't really prove. So I started by myself, and I was looking for something, and I was talking to people I knew. And I was trying to speak with intelligence people and read articles. And easily I was trying to get deeper and deeper. But at some point I realized that, of course, it's not enough. And if I want to get to the real story, I need to meet people face to face. That's not something that you talked about on the phone. So I booked a flight and went back to Kinshasa. A few days after I arrived in Kinshasa, a guy whom I knew later as an arm dealer, and I met him only 2 days earlier, showed up at my hotel and told me he knew I was about to meet with some Rwandese militia leader named Lawana Kunda, Serge Norim, I guess. And he knew that I'm actually working about the uranium smuggling. Of course, I didn't tell anyone except 3 people that I worked with there. That's what I'm dealing with. The fact that he knew that I'm going to meet this guy was a problem for me. And to make a long story short, I decided to go back to Israel. But I think it was a day before we leave, someone approached me with an offer to sell me documents and parts stolen from an old nuclear research facility in Kinshasa. He brought pictures. I was with my translator, and we didn't really believe that. We didn't know if it's real, it's not real. You start wondering if is it that easy? But as I said, I had to go back on. So I won't tell I'm a bit disappointed from the fact that I need to cut short my trip, but I felt that there's something to start with. I returned to Congo over a year later with understanding this time that if I really wanted my investigation to get to the heart of what's going on, I needed a solid cover story. The logic is very simple. If there is a black market for uranium smuggling, and I have convincing enough cover story, I should be able to expose it because someone out there will be willing to sell it to me. That's how I became Anna from Bulgaria, for those who watch the movie. During the shooting, I must say some moments were a bit scary, but honestly, I was mostly shocked by how easy it was from time to time to reach people willing to sell radioactive materials. As you saw, I think in the end of the movie, when you're working on a story like this, it's very easy to get pulled in. You discover something, but instead of saying, okay, that's it, there's always another layer to uncover. When we found out that the mine in Chilkalumbe was actually open, that alone was proof that uranium was being extracted and sold illegally because officially the mine is supposed to be closed. But of course, we wanted to dig a little bit deeper to see who was selling it, in what form, and our could actually get access to the material. After managing to obtain a small sample of yellow cake from private dealers, I got tip for someone who told me that Areva, which is a mining company, then jointly owned by the Congolese government and French corporation, was selling materials illegally. That was a breakthrough because now we are talking on a governmental involvement. So it's been 15 years since this film was shot. The smuggling, including uranium and other radioactive materials, didn't stop. They only become more sophisticated. How is it still going on? I won't spoil it for you. Professor Sergi Bango can talk about it. That's it.
Thank you, Shani. There's so
Sorry
many.
if I spoke too fast, but you should have told me
There's so
to slow
many
down.
more questions to ask you, but and we will in our discussion as well. Thank you. One of them is what made you go there to begin with? So think about it while I have the honor to give Serge the screen. I'm so glad you're with us, Serge.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Yael. Thank you, Shani, for associating me to this, let's say, more than 15 years after. And that I can see by following the movie again that nothing has changed. It's still the same passion, the same emotions that we can follow that movie. And also thank you to all the attendees for finding time to listen to us. So because I have 7 minutes, let me go straight to the points that I will try to summarize. Look, I will start by saying 15 years later, there are a few things that have changed and many things that are still the same up until today. And I will take from where Shani stopped by saying things became more and more sophisticated today, right? And if it became more and more sophisticated, it means it implies more technology. And when it implies technology, it becomes more difficult to find. To discover in terms of the smuggling, in terms of illicit exploitation and so on, but also the networks of the corrupt officials are getting more and more bigger because they are now not only local corrupt officials, but they are also trans-borders officials, so meaning in some of the neighboring countries, and all the way to the final destination of those those products. I'm talking about the products. I don't want to mention uranium, and I will explain why in a few minutes. But let me start by what has not changed so far. The things that have not changed so far, as you saw, especially in Lubumbashi and the outskirts of Lubumbashi, is the poverty of the people. Right, the communities themselves where those illegal exploitations are conducted. Right, you have billionaires, you have millionaires, we have rich people from around the world who benefit for this smuggling of illegal exploitation. But what do they give to the population? If it's not that, as the movie said, they remain, them and their families, infected by the radioactivities of those activities. Two, they remain poor. You saw some huts instead of houses there. The huts are still there today. If they're not destroyed, they are actually still there. No housing, no proper house developed for them. No water, no electricity for the very same communities. And that's all the way to the value chain, starting by the extraction site, the surrounding of the extraction site, to before it leaves the country to another country. Right, the whole way, being by rail or by road, it's only poor communities that are there. Right, this is one that has not changed. Two, something that has not changed is today we've been talking 15 years before about illegal exploitation and smuggling. So today, the smuggling is still continuing, the extraction is still continuing, but the form has changed. Which form has changed? Today, they prefer to declare that they are exploiting cobalt and copper. Cobalt and copper, which, by the way, are in the list of critical minerals. We all heard about even the discussions that are happening between the DRC and other countries and the United States on critical minerals. So the critical minerals are there. And if you know now the chemical composition of some of those minerals, then you'll understand how the uranium, for example, is hidden inside cobalt, it's hidden inside copper, right? It's hidden inside niobium, because we also have another mineral called niobium, which is very radioactive, almost the same than uranium. And also, 15 years ago, we were talking about Shinkolobwe, right, as the main source of uranium. But today, we discovered that there are other sites, other mining sites, and one of them, and I think we had a discussion with Shani about that, is one site called Luiswishi, right, which site has a uranium, percentage of uranium is higher than the uranium that was extracted in Shinkolobwe. Right? And sometimes the people working there, the engineers, the miners, they're not even aware of being exposed to radioactivity or radioactivity materials, right? And then few things that have changed, right? The things that have changed, for example, you saw in the movie, the people were talking about sometimes the war or that they create some chaos by maybe some armed groups and everything to make sure villagers run away in the bush, and then they can take control of their land, right? Because they target uranium, they target all those so-called critical minerals, right? But today, not only that the war is getting a big form, I'm sure we've been following what's happening today in the east of the country, but more importantly, we also have some corrupt officials. I'm sorry to say that because I'm part of the officials, unfortunately, but I still remain this activist, right? So we have corrupt officials that are actually giving a form in the confiscation. I'm calling it confiscation of those lands belonging to the communities, right? Under the form of land expropriation. But what is cynical about it is the definition of land expropriation means that the government can seize a land, but that's always being for public benefits, right? But in this case, we're talking about land expropriation for the benefit of some of the mining companies, right? And for your information today, especially the Great Katanga, we have more than 80% of the mining companies there that are Chinese companies, right? Which means they have enough technology, for example, to separate the cobalt from uranium, cobalt from manganese. They have the technology, which many countries, including the DRC, don't have. And then we have few things that have changed as well. Is today, unfortunately, one of the big witness of the movie, Golden Misabiko, has passed away about 4 years ago, right, in Kinshasa, so he's no longer with us. For Chebeya himself, Golden showed you that Chebeya was killed. And then Moise Katumbi, as we speak, is now in exile, by the way, right? He's no longer the governor. He's in exile because of few things that we have discovered that was happening in Katanga, right? So I will say those are my first remarks concerning the movie today. Now, I think the main issue here is what is the final destination of everything that has been smuggled? Because all those people we saw being in Congo, and sometimes some of the neighboring countries are just transit countries, are just middlemen people, right? Today, the final destination are, unfortunately, whether China or North Korea, right? On the ground, some of the big players, right, who play the role of middle names are, of course, Congolese, and especially some of the corrupt officials. Two, they are Chinese, as I said, because they control the market, the cobalt market, and so on. And then three, and that's probably more important for Israel, is Lebanese, right? The Lebanese community, I mean, the business community is really for more than 10 years now, they've been also controlling the mining sector. That addresses the issue of financial flows that I was asked to, I mean, I was presented of doing. I've been doing some studies on the financial flows in support to war, to the conflict, and to terrorism, right? And I think we have enough evidence that most of the Lebanese who are doing business, who are doing illicit exploitation of our minerals, are somehow linked to the Hezbollah as well, right? Because they're the big funders of the Hezbollah, right? That we know about it. We documented that as well. So we think that if it's important for us, we think it's important for us to try to address one of the main issue of illegal exploitation of uranium and other radioactive materials. It's important to also look at what are the financial flows related to that. About 3 years ago, let's say 4 years, in 2021, the United States government was considering sanctioning one of the big banks operating in the DRC, that's Afriland, right, which is a West African bank, but operating in the DRC for two reasons. One is that, for example, the Americans discovered that 3 North Korean citizens open bank accounts at that bank in Lubumbashi without even fake passports. So it was with their official North Korean passport, which are, as you know, blacklisted passports, right? So they managed to open a bank account and they've been doing business as normal in Katanga. And the second reason is that the bank was also caught trying to let's say, do some money laundering on behalf of some sanctioned individuals, US sanctioned individuals, right? So what was happening, it was actually what they were doing. So those corrupt individuals, including those Lebanese and others, right? Of course, their money in their bank account was in US dollars. So the bank was offering them to convert it into euros, so that they avoid the control from Americans. And then from there, they can dispatch that money to the friend and the direct networks of those sanctioned people. And from there, the proxies can now give back the money to the people who are sanctioned, right? So that shows how even the financial flow has been sophisticated with time. Right, and it's really something that we need to look at if we would like to address this issue. So I think probably past the 7 minutes long ago, I will stop there for now, and of course we'll be open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Serge, for updating us. That is invaluable. Or the floor is yours, Ori, actually.
Unmute.
Yes, unmute, please.
Thank you. Yes, sorry. I will share a short presentation, mainly because it helps me remember what I wanted to tell everyone. So thank you for inviting me. I told Shani that I will talk a little bit about certain loopholes in the nuclear proliferation regime and how countries basically use these loopholes. And the first loophole is something that obviously we saw in the film. It has to do with how illicit activities pertaining to uranium excavation take place. And I will try to give us somewhat of a broader look into the loopholes, broader as far as 7 minutes can basically give us. So just to recap, we're here as a part of the NPT process. So the NPT has two somewhat contradicting aims. It wants to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons on the one hand, or to limit it to the first 5, while also promoting peaceful uses of nuclear technology. And the fact that different actors are absolutely allowed to promote these peaceful uses is a part of the loophole that we're going to talk about. Essential thing to remember about the NPT is that it's what we call a discriminatory treaty. It basically says that the first 5 countries that have managed to acquire and develop nuclear weapons, and they did so by January 1st, 1967, are recognized as legitimate possessors of nuclear weapons, and we call them nuclear weapon states, and all other countries are basically allowed to join the treaty as non-nuclear weapon states. And there are a few loopholes which basically pertain to how the treaty sets up the correlating regime. The treaty itself does not limit nuclear trade. It doesn't say that countries are not allowed to buy and sell uranium, if you will. And the treaty doesn't say that NPT members are forbidden from exporting nuclear technology to members or not members. And in fact, it doesn't give preferential treatment to members. It doesn't say, if you're an NPT member, you have to give preferential treatment to other NPT members when you come to engage in, the export and the commerce in general of nuclear technology. The condition that the NPT details, and please remember that it's a treaty that was crystallized in 1968 and came into effect in 1970, so a long time ago, basically says you have to make sure that your client attaches a peaceful uses declaration. And in the early 70s, the NPT signatories also came up with a list of what exactly you should kind of be wary about when you export. And the list is self-explanatory. It mainly has to do with uranium enrichment, plutonium reprocessing, and the equipment you'd need for a nuclear reactor. In 1974, the Indians carried out a nuclear test. They called it a peaceful nuclear test or a peaceful nuclear explosion, and significantly, they were not a part of the NPT. And the 1974 PNE, peaceful nuclear explosion, got a lot of serious actors thinking about what does it mean if a country can just go ahead and explode a nuclear device. And significantly, if you examine the question from a legal perspective, it wasn't necessarily an illegal act, neither for NPT members nor for countries that were not NPT members, because the NPT doesn't say you're not allowed to explode or to explore peaceful nuclear technology, and it doesn't say anything about something like a PNE, but India wasn't a part of the PNE, and if anyone would make the argument today, it would be completely rejected, but we have to understand that the treaty itself is silent on activities like that. In the mid-1970s, following the Indian PNE, a parallel track was set up. It was called the Nuclear Suppliers Group, basically an attempt led by the US and specifically Secretary of State and former National Security Advisor Kissinger to kind of streamline nuclear exports and to make sure that sensitive technology doesn't reach actors that weren't seen as or weren't perceived necessarily as reliable actors or serious actors. And it was supposed to catch within its net actors that were not a part of the NPT, specifically the French. The French only joined the NPT in the 90s, and they were happily exporting their technology around in the 70s. But the guidelines that the Nuclear Suppliers Group agreed to in the mid-1970s wasn't terribly restricting. Basically, it kind of met the same standards that the NPT group met. And it didn't, the countries that agreed to accept the Nuclear Suppliers Group's guideline, they didn't agree on something that was later termed in the literature as a full scope safeguard, basically a demand from a client to place all its nuclear facilities under safeguards. This demand was only accepted by the Nuclear Suppliers Group in April 92, but before that, it didn't It wasn't a part of the guidelines, and that created a big loophole. It meant that if a country had another nuclear facility and wanted to engage in nuclear commerce, it was under no restriction to place that specific nuclear facility under safeguards before 92, according to the nuclear suppliers' guidelines. So now we're going to detail a few of the famous loopholes, if you will, of the nuclear regime, as it turned out. Some of them are more controversial than others. Perhaps the more controversial one is the Israeli raid on the Iraqi reactor from June 1981. You can see a photo of it here. So the Iraqi reactor was a research nuclear reactor supplied to Iraq by France. It was supposed to be fueled by highly enriched fuel, which the Iraqis actually sent the first shipment off in July 1980, so they were already in possession of AGU fuel. And significantly, Iraq was an NPT member, so it was actually under IAEA safeguards. But the Israelis, after the raid, maintained that the safeguards were not effective, that Iraq basically had pathways to the bomb. This was controversial. The international community largely didn't accept it before 91, and after 91, there was some acceptance of this argument. And specifically, the Israelis said, listen, this was a reactor that the Iraqis could have clandestinely used to irradiate natural uranium and produce plutonium, or just take the highly enriched uranium and produce a few bombs. And the Americans also agreed, internally, the Carter administration agreed that the Iraqis had the potential to create, and I'm quoting, 1 to 3 bombs, and they weren't exactly sure what to do with it. But I think more interesting is what happened following the Iraq raid, or basically the clandestine Iraqi program from 81 to 91, what the Iraqis did, circumventing the NPT, they established a network of facilities which they did not declare. So these facilities were not under IAEA safeguards, and they went about developing an Iraqi clandestine enrichment program. Specifically, they were using some relatively new technologies in EMS, electromagnetic separation, but that's a famous example of how a country basically managed to bypass some of the restrictions. There are a few other things, interesting loopholes we need to consider when we talk about these loopholes. For example, specifically with uranium enrichment, we have to remember that the treaty itself, the NPT, does not limit the right of countries to enrich uranium. It doesn't say anything about that. And in fact, we have famous NNWS, non-nuclear weapon states, who enrich uranium: Argentina, Brazil, Japan, Ukraine. And they do it as a part of legitimate civilian nuclear purposes. And it doesn't have, this does not imply that they're somehow infringing on their NPT obligations. And an interesting thing is, if you look at the Iranian nuclear history, and Iran is a country whose nuclear project is under long-time criticism and consideration, and we all know it, the Iranians historically have stated that they're interested in highly enriched uranium, perhaps in the future, to power nuclear-powered submarines. So no one believes that the Iranians are about to deploy a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines. But this would be a legitimate use of 90% enriched fuel. And in fact, the American fleet has more than 60 submarines that are fueled exactly like that. So this is considered actually a legitimate use of uranium enrichment, for example. Sorry, excuse me. We're running out of time. I'll just give a few other famous examples. Members of the NPT have in the past engaged in illicit nuclear activities, and you see here a photo of the Libyan nuclear centrifuges. Libya was a member of the NPT, and it bought centrifuges from Pakistan, and it took the international community a few years to decipher that, to infiltrate the relevant networks and understand what was going on there. And of course, if we just want to kind of touch on the plutonium route, there are two famous cases we need to consider. So the plutonium route is considered less feasible for countries that are thinking about maybe exploring loopholes in the nuclear proliferation regime, but we still need to consider it. So firstly, famously, North Korea, once it joined the NPT and it allowed inspectors in the early 90s, in 92, came across an interesting thing. There was a gap between how the North Koreans saw the technical capabilities of the inspectors, the IAEA inspectors, and what the inspectors could do. So the North Koreans were surprised to discover that the IAEA could actually detect the fact that they were secretly removing some plutonium from their irradiated fuel. So this is something we need to consider, that states may tinker with spent fuel and how they report on it. And the issue of breeder reactors, I think, is less relevant, so I'm not going to expand on it, and I also kind of ran out of time. But lastly, I want to remind us all that another route that countries may explore is a clandestine reactor establishment, and the famous example here is the Syrian, North Korean supplied Al-Kibar reactor in the province of Deir ez-Zor in Syria. This was a clandestine reactor built by an NPT member that was under an obligation not to do so. The international community believes that this was a reactor that was likely a plutogenic reactor, meaning that they were probably planning to radiate uranium fuel and process plutonium. We don't know where, because there was no indication where the plutonium would have been processed, and Israel bombed specifically this reactor in 2007, but it leaves a few of the relevant questions open. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ori, for making the connection to the NPT and doing such an amazing review of what's missing and terrifying us some more. Because if we don't keep being terrified, we will, what do they say? We will die closed eyes without even knowing. There's a better expression of that. I will come to it. And last but not least, Daniel, please.
Thank you very much, and I'll try and be brief so we've got more time for questions. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak on the panel. And I think the film was really fascinating. It provided a really interesting look at the world of illicit markets. And I wanted to commend Shani's brave efforts to show us what these networks look like, because it's not always easy to see the insides of and how these things work. Natural uranium is probably the least regulated part of the nuclear supply chain, and I think it's an area we don't really think enough about. And I already talked a little bit about safeguards there. And IAEA safeguards have tended to start when the uranium has, I quote, left the plant or processing stage. So this is when often as hexafluoride gas destined for enrichment. There have been some efforts more recently to try and pull some of these sort of front-end parts of the fuel cycle into safeguards. But I just wanted to say a little bit about what I think are the risks with future proliferation concerns here, particularly related to natural uranium, and a little bit of good news, I hope. But I think the proliferation risk is probably fairly low, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be aware of it and that we shouldn't give it more consideration. So what do I mean here? Well, states like Iran and North Korea need uranium from somewhere, obviously. And indeed, acquiring the fissile materials, so the highly enriched uranium or the plutonium, is probably the most difficult part of the challenge that they face in becoming nuclear weapon states. I think enrichment is probably the most difficult challenge, which requires a lot of complicated technology, like the thousands of or tens of thousands of centrifuges that we've seen in Iran and Natanz, or the ones that North Korea have revealed in the past year. And the objective of enrichment is really to produce material with U-235 isotopic content of around 90%. Natural uranium has around 0.7%. So you're basically trying to increase the ratio of that within the substance. And obviously this it requires a lot of processes, a lot of energy, a lot of technology, huge amounts of money, and often buying this stuff from kind of markets outside of the country. And we need a lot of natural uranium to feed into this process. And so a lot of this comes down to complicated maths that I barely understand because I'm not a physicist. But having kind of looked into it, you probably need somewhere around 200 kilos of natural uranium to produce a single kilo of 90% U-235, which you could use in a weapon. And so given the IAEA talks about a significant quantity of HEU being around 25 kilos, that equates to something like 5 tons of natural uranium to produce a single weapon. So in terms of the risk here, we have to take this into account. Obviously, if you're looking at risk beyond kind of experimental scale programs, you're going to need a lot of this material, which I guess is not something you can smuggle in a suitcase. So this is maybe the good news. We occasionally see stories about proliferators interested in uranium mines. North Korea and Iran both have domestic mining operations, but we don't really know what those look like. And given the plethora of sanctions that companies associated proliferators are often hit with, I think it's unlikely a large international company would knowingly get involved in this. But obviously these networks try to be deceptive, and there's always the risk of insider threats and corruption that we've talked a lot about today. We know that Iran purchased around 450 kilos of uranium from South Africa in the mid-70s. We've seen rumors about a secret deal between Iran and Niger in the past year. And of course, Iranian entities have historic commercial ownership of 15% of one of the world's largest uranium mines in Namibia. And occasionally, I hear from journalists that are investigating North Korea and uranium procurement. And obviously, the country has substantial sanctions busting networks in sub-Saharan Africa. And this architecture really dates back to the Cold War, when North Korea sent soldiers and military support to train some of the groups fighting apartheid. The country's also sold a lot of arms in that region before, and Serge mentioned the North Koreans opening bank accounts in the DRC, which isn't really surprising given this kind of presence in the region, and also what we know about how the DPRK operates in trying to access the financial system in light of sanctions. So I mean, the question, I guess, is would a really audacious scheme to transfer large quantities of natural uranium be possible? I mean, we have seen North Korea and Iran move very large shipments before in breach of sanctions. I mean, most recently, we've seen thousands of containers of weapons moved to Ukraine by North Korea. I think it is possible, but maybe not so likely that we would see a huge amount of material moving. And we can talk a little bit more about this if people are interested. And so to just sum up, I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was great. Thank you for taking those risks for us to kind of see inside some of these networks. And I thought it was a really interesting watch, providing an interesting point of entry into discussion about history, colonial legacy, and both human and kind of proliferation risks. So I look forward to discussion.
Thank you, Daniel. And just so I make sure that everyone knows, Shani didn't only make the documentary, she also is totally responsible for the creation of this amazing panel. So I wanted to acknowledge that, Shani, and thank you again for that. Before we open the floor to Q&A and comments from the audience, I wonder if you have any questions or comments for each other. I guess not. That's it. Yeah, please, Serge, the floor is yours.
Yes, I think the question to the colleagues in the panel would be, I can see Shani did the great work on the ground, but also I can see most of my colleagues are doctors, right? So the question is, how can we probably work around this movie in order to extract what can be extracted, to publish some useful articles? I'm talking about scientific articles based on this video. Over.
Go ahead.
Well, Serge, as you know, we are working on something new, and we are trying to get more information and bring more.
Could you speak closer to the mic, Shani, please?
I'm saying that Serge and I are also working on a new thing about what's going on in Congo, and we are both following. He's of course much more than me, but trying to figure out and trying to get more information about what's going on these days, who are the key figures in the smuggling area, and what can be done. And I think you can tell Serge, we know that the great power today are still really they are in DRC, they are involved in the mines, they are involved in many other areas. So how can you, as the government, can maybe use them to fight this thing? And now the fact that Congo is in a state of war today affects the situation.
Can I answer?
Yes.
And that will also help the audience, of course. I think the way we can try address this issue is by pushing on our side from the Congolese government to start reviewing some of those mining contracts, right? Because I'm sorry to say that most of those mining operations that are done with the authorization of the government. Okay, of course, to our credit, I will say that before our regime came to power in 2019, those contracts were already signed before we come to power, right? So the idea now is to see how can we make use of all the expertise that we have around the world on nuclear proliferation, like Ori presented, your movie, and also the intervention from Daniel. You know, how can we combine all that in order to start to put in place a strategy to start reviewing those contracts? This is one. And then two, on the international community side, especially in transit countries who Europe or other responsible countries, I may say like that, right? How do we, looking at a standard of traceability of all the minerals, right, that leave Congo, right? Because as we saw, it's no longer only the yellow cake itself that is exported, but it's hidden under some of other minerals, right? For example, a Chinese company will say, we're exporting cobalt, right? I don't know, 800 tons of cobalt. We're exporting copper, for example. But we know now that in most of those copper and cobalt are actually embedded, that by the nature, of course. Embedded, you have uranium embedded to it, right? And other radioactive materials, okay? That we can only find out most of the time when it reaches a destination country with the right technology that knows exactly how to separate that. But what we can do already is to say we are able to retrace where that particular cargo is coming from, right, in Congo, and then we can also have access to those sources of minerals. That's a suggestion you can put there.
Any other question or comment from each other? I'll then open the floor. Go ahead, Daniel, please. Unmute.
Thanks. Yeah, just feeling conscious that I'm not a scientist here, but I know Ori as well as a historian.
That's okay.
And what I was thinking was sort of how historians can kind of try and engage with these topics a little bit more. And I think a lot of nuclear history really is tended to focus on the nuclear weapon states, on their arsenals and on their doctrine and how they got to where they did. And it really doesn't engage so much with the legacies of colonialism. And this is in the area of mining, for example, but also testing in places like North Africa and in the South Pacific. So I think there's real opportunities here to try and understand this a little better using the archives that are open to us.
Absolutely. To mention that as an aside, next Monday we're having an international multidisciplinary discussion reflections, roundtable reflections on the lessons we've learned from World War II. So I'm sure you'd want to be there. And another important date we might keep in mind for your expertise is, of course, August 21, which is the International Day of Victims of Terrorism. As you pointed out, terrorism might very well take over the scene, which is so scary. And of course, Shani, as you pointed out, as all of you pointed out, with technological advancements, our terror should be heightened, since it's almost like the sky is the limit. Let all of us attend to Linda Pence-Gunther's statement and question. Linda is asking privately, she said, so sorry to hear about the death of Golden Misabiko. He was our 2014 Nuclear Free Future Award winner. We've been wondering ever since what became of him. If you have any additional information, please could you email me, and please, those of you on the panel, she's asking for you to email it privately, so let's respect that. But then Linda has a question. Is the concern still that uranium from DRC might be sold for nuclear weapons development, or given the push to develop new nuclear power plants, could Shinkolobe, for example, be reopened fully to export uranium for so-called civil nuclear project? Any one of you can tend to that question, please.
I'll answer generally, in a more general way, not specifically about that specific mine. It might be a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing, if there was an official decision to reopen a mine such as that, because you could see something like that happening under better regulation, and you could see an international company with better regulation history doing it, and it wouldn't necessarily be a bad development. It depends on who would be opening the site and who would be in charge of regulating it. Sometimes sunlight is the best disinfectant, and it could be the same in theory, right, with regards to sites like that, but you'd have to make sure that there's that the companies that are involved in it, the private sector companies, are not corrupt and are actually doing their job. And as you saw in the final section of Shani's movie, especially when she was calling the American company, which just changed its name, the devil is in the details. Who's doing the regulatory work and who's actually opening the site is what we should look into it. But generally speaking, it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. And just as a side comment, it's not necessarily a bad thing for countries to develop civilian nuclear energy if it helps them, in my opinion, this is a subjective opinion, if it helps them meet emission goals. I think that nuclear energy is one way that could help humanity bridge the gap to zero emissions. It's a controversial opinion. It's an opinion. But again, this would depend, again, the devil is in the details in this respect.
Serge, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this question. Thank you, Ori. I know that your controversial opinion is getting a lot of responses. But go ahead, Serge, please.
Yes, I will second Ori, actually. I will second her on actually seeing how probably we can better control, right, this exploitation, for the simple reason that, and I think Shani's movie showed that there are a lot of artisanal mining that are happening in the site and around the site. By the way, remember, if they want to access the site, they don't have to go through the main entrance where you know, the officials were showing to Shani that, you know, there is nothing, everything is closed down, there is just the bush and everything. So you can access that mine even 5 kilometers away from there underground, right? And those artisanal miners, they have enough tools and equipment. Remember, when they go underground, it's not their personal equipment or tools they use to dig, right? Usually there are some providers, right? You know, can be even some business people, you know, they can provide them with the tools and equipment to dig, and they are patient. They can take even 1 month digging until when they will reach exactly where you have the uranium, you know, deposits underground, and you won't see it from the surface. So I think making it more official and give it to not only a responsible country, but a responsible company, as Ori said, can help actually managing and controlling that. This is one. And then two, I will add that since 2018, the DRC mining code obliges all the mining companies to locally transform their product before exporting that, right? Unfortunately, of course, that is not done because we don't have the facilities built yet, like refineries or smelters. We don't have enough energy, even though we have the potential for energy, because if we start transforming locally, that will help, first of all, separate, as I said, the cobalt from uranium or from any other product that is attached to it. So that's something actually we need to engage in terms of finding the ways we can actually apply the mining code in that regard. Over.
Thank you. Let's move on, because there are two related questions that are very important. Fetouche Gilbert, good information overall. What are the dangers of uranium radioactivity? And Katsumi Furitsu, important question, as always. Did you see or hear any health problems related to uranium mining among miners and their families while you were staying in Congo? And I would like to comment before you answer. That was the first thing that killed me inside, actually, when I watched the film the first time. So it's interesting that you're asking the question this way. Katsumi, we talk more about it. Please, Shani, Serge, please respond to that. Shani, go ahead.
I think Serge will know better, but for those who watch the movie, yes, of course, there are effects for the radioactivity. We had an interview with a doctor who made a research about the people who worked in the mine and people who lived close to the mine. They find out that those kids that was born and the father worked in the mines die like minutes after they was born. Some of them was born without I don't know how to say it, Serge, help me with what covered the stomach. Like they were born and die minutes, sometimes seconds after they just came to the world. And of course, and we know that radioactivity, we know that from other places, from what happened in Ukraine, even in Israel, the story about what's going on in Dimona and how radioactivity affected the people's health.
Thank you, Shani. Serge, I'm sure you can add a thing.
Yes, I think let's just see the you know, Shani mentioned some of the places that have been exposed somewhere in radioactivity, and of course the bombs, the atomic bombs that were you know, dropped by the Americans in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that used the uranium from Shikolobwe. I mean, up until today, that's more than 50 years later, up until today, you have all the health consequences. You know, babies are born with maybe one organ is missing, you know, other people are developing cancers and everything. So how about where the source of that uranium is? So health-wise and environmental-wise, it's very, very complicated. You know, because remember that particular mine, Shinkolobo, is just 150 kilometers from Lubumbashi, which is the second town in Congo, right? So it's really, there are many, many negative consequences on that.
Thank you, Surgeon. Let me direct all of you to our webinar for the TPNW on March 3rd, which is on our website, about intergenerational effects of a nuclear exposure, bombing, or nuclear exposure to testing or radiation. Which was an excellent webinar. Here it is. You have the link. We've been, our working group at the center, I normally don't take time to introduce the center more thoroughly, but we have an ongoing working group on what we call the nuclear working group, which is precisely the effects of nuclear bombing exposure and nuclear testing and radiation exposure. So those of you who are interested, please join the working group. It is really excellent, and hopefully people from different countries learn from each other, and we can bring the victims' voices to the foreground and let them tell the world about it as well. There is, I think this is as much as we have in terms of questions and answers, but please do stay with us, because that's what we do. Okay, we're involved in all layers, from policy, from word of mouth to documentaries to scientists like you and policymakers and the United Nations. And without all this multidimensional exposure, I don't think we will succeed, NPT or otherwise. Mary Dixon had to leave for a flight, but she too had just shown a play, a documentary play, in fact, called Exposed, that in fact dealt with not only the exposure in the United States of the downwinders, but also the government's denial of it. And on and on. And on Wednesday the 14th, one of our awardees, the awardees of the center this year, is indeed an offspring of a mother who was exposed in Kazakhstan, who was born without arms, yet became one of the most incredible artists with his mouth and toes. So please stay with us. Yes, thank you, Katsumi. It is a critical webinar. I hope we continue the work together. Shani, God bless you, and thank you again. And we continue to work together. Serge, Ori, Daniel, I promised not to leave you without you giving the audience your quote's last words. So go ahead. Let's start from the end. Daniel, you first.
Well, thank you very much for letting me be a part of this. And, as I just echo what I said about Shani's work as well, it is really, really great. I kind of really enjoy these documentaries that kind of take an investigative approach. I think it's really important when you're trying to kind of uncover the truth. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Ori, please.
So, I would like to second Daniel's thank you comment, but also I would like us all to think about where we're heading in terms of nuclear proliferation, given the Trump administration's policies and how US allies are perceiving these shaky extended deterrence guarantees, and what are we likely to see with Japan, South Korea, and Europe. And I think we need to carefully consider that.
Yeah. Serge, your floor.
Yes, once again, congratulations to Shani for this great work and the fact that she's been so resilient, and you heard that she still want to come back to Congo to continue her work, and of course we'll always be open and welcome you, and especially now that we are no longer in exile, so we can definitely accommodate her, because we think that a response, and it's our responsibility to save the world from this kind of risk and danger that we are exposing people. Thank you.
And Shani.
Thank you all, and just want to remind you that even war that seems very far away from us are also our problems and our issues, because things that are going on in Congo will be knock on our door. And thank you again, Ori, Daniel, and Serge, and Yael for giving us this stage. Thanks a lot.
And thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
See
Bye-bye.
you again. Take care.
Thanks, bye.